Hey, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you're watching The Rational Female. Feminism divides men and women into two separate classes, the oppressed class and the oppressor class. This division comes from Marxism, which was created to divide society into the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. It's important to understand Marxism to understand feminism, for Marxism is where feminism draws many of its ideas from. Modern wokeism is really a form of neo-Marxism, and that's why intersectional feminism is so problematic. It seeks to continue to divide society and to divide people by race, gender, sexuality, and class. There are really two main types of feminists. The feminists who run the movement and who write the theory, and the women and men who call themselves feminists because they've been brainwashed into believing all of the lies that the feminist academics and the theorists keep on telling us. The feminists who write the theory teach women a series of lies and distortion about human history and male and female gender relations. If you question their views, they call you a sexist, a misogynist, anti-women, and so on, which is a bullying tactic designed to shut down anyone who asks questions about feminism or questions its efficacy altogether. If you ask someone a question and they resort to insulting you, then it's safe to assume that there's something they don't want you to know, and thus they shut you down to try and keep you in the dark. By the way, I'm not excusing the actions of genuine misogynists, but I am saying that most people are not actually misogynists, and most non-feminists or anti-feminists are not misogynist or sexist. We're merely people who want genuine equality and genuine complementarianism, not this division that feminism seeks to create. Feminism is designed to keep men and women in a state of submission, just as the Abrahamic religions were designed to also keep men and women in a state of submission. This is why now, when you ask questions or have a different opinion, you are called a bigot. Look at J.K. Rowling. She's done more for the world and accomplished more than most of us ever will in our lifetimes, but the mass media is now calling her a bigot and a transphobe when she's repeatedly said that she loves and respects trans people. She's merely concerned with the current mainstream narrative that undermines biology and calls gender a social construct. J.K. Rowling is an extremely kind-hearted person and was once viewed as a national treasure, but now the media has very quickly turned on her and calls her a bigot and other silly nonsense, which really is just a form of bullying. The whole point of calling someone a TERF or a bigot or a sexist is not really about bringing real social justice. If these people cared about actual social justice, they would go after the genuinely dangerous people in society, rather than gang up on those who have done nothing wrong and who simply just have an opinion. The real goal is to make everyone turn on each other and question our realities so that we remain slaves to what the ruling elite, the mass media, and the corporations and so on want. Thus, in this video, I'm going to show you a few very common forms of feminist gaslighting and teach you how you can handle them so that you don't get sucked into them. Number 1, feminism just means equality. The first and most common form of feminist gaslighting that I'm going to discuss here is the phrase, feminism means equality of the sexes, or feminism means equal rights for women. This phrasing is extremely dangerous because whenever somebody says that feminism just means equal rights for women, what they're saying is that if you question this or refute this, then you don't support equal rights for women. This is why whenever I say that I reject feminism or I'm an anti-feminist, most feminists will then turn on me and accuse me of being a misogynist, just as they do with any non-feminist or egalitarian. This phrasing is designed to bully you and to strike fear into your heart so that you don't question feminism. Almost no man or woman is going to be against equal rights for women, so teaching people that feminism means equal rights for women is a very convenient way of shutting people down to prevent them from asking questions. So here are some statements and some questions that you can ask or say whenever a feminist shouts at you and claims that feminism just means gender equality or equality of the sexes. The word feminism itself literally comes from the Latin words fem, meaning women, and ism, meaning doctrine, bias, philosophy, or school of thought. So the very word feminism literally means women's doctrine. The word tells you its meaning, and that meaning is obviously not equality. So how can feminists continuously lie about feminism being equality when the very word itself means women's doctrine? Why do we have a men's rights movement if feminism is all about gender equality? If feminism is for gender equality, then feminism and men's rights activism should really be working together. Heck, men's rights activism shouldn't even exist if feminism is already solving men's problems. Why aren't these two movements working side by side if feminism is all about gender equality? Why do feminists use the phrase "the future is female," which clearly sounds like and is a female supremacist slogan? It was coined by Sally Miller Gerhardt in 1982 in her three-step proposal that states the future, if there is one, is female. She asserted that every culture must begin to affirm a female future, species responsibility must be returned to women in every culture, and the proportion of men must be reduced to and maintained at approximately 10% of the human race. So when feminists say that the future is female, they're reiterating a phrase coined by a woman who wanted to kill off 90% of the male population and have all positions of power controlled by and run by women. How can one tell me that feminism means gender equality and then show me a slogan that says the future is female? It's a direct contradiction, almost as if feminism is designed to gaslight us all into believing that it's about gender equality while telling us right in our faces that it's literally about female supremacy. It's very similar to how the Bible tells people that God is loving, while simultaneously saying that if you don't do what this loving God wants, you shall be damned to a lifetime of hell. It's really very manipulative. Needless to say, most feminists will likely respond by getting angry, defensive, or finding some way to defend their female supremacist doctrine, in which case the best thing is to simply walk away and not engage. Obviously, not all feminists are like this, and I really do think that the majority of women and men who call themselves feminists or who say that they support feminism aren't really aware that feminism is extremely manipulative and how it's really a low vibrational ideology designed to keep women in a state of perpetual anger, rage, and misery, and to direct all of that anger and rage against 50% of the human population. The goal of feminism is not equality, it's division. So I will say that yes, many feminists might then be not really angry, but just a bit confused. And don't even take my word for it either. You can look at the resources in the description box below. How the hell can feminism say the future is female and then say that it's about gender equality? It just doesn't make any sense. It's really just designed to confuse, manipulate, and gaslight people so that they question their reality, to stop them from actually questioning whether or not feminism is actually about gender equality. Since most people don't really understand what feminism is, most people simply call themselves feminists because the mass media tells us that feminism is a women's movement or feminism is all about gender equality. But the thing is, it's not actually their fault, it's just because they're not aware that they're being manipulated and lied to. I myself even used to think when I was younger that feminism means equality. I used to identify as a feminist, and it's really just through doing lots and lots of research on feminism and talking to feminists and reading feminist books, feminist blogs, that I really came to understand that feminism has absolutely nothing to do with gender equality at all. Finally, why do we have egalitarianism? On Reddit, there's two subreddits, feminism and egalitarianism. If feminism was all about egalitarianism, then we would not even need to have two separate subreddits. We wouldn't need to have egalitarianism at all. The word egalitarianism literally means equality, but the word feminism means women's doctrine. And please also, don't just take my word for it. Everything I'm saying, please go, after watching this video, go and look into it yourself. Never ever take what somebody says to you at face value. Look into it yourself. Look at the word feminism. Look at the history of the phrase, the future is female. Look at men's rights activism. It literally tells you feminism is not about equality. Feminism means women's doctrine. It's a political doctrine designed to say that women are an oppressed class and men are the oppressor class. That's what it is. This isn't my opinion. This is just me describing what it actually is. The second rather common gaslighting technique that feminists use is the absurd claim that feminism is for all women. There are so many ways to counter this, but the first and easiest thing is to ask, does that include non-feminist women? If feminism is for all women, then that should include women who are not feminists. For example, feminists teach us about Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, the founders of second-wave feminism, but they don't teach us about Phyllis Schlafly. Schlafly was an American activist who was happily married with 6 children and also had a career as a lawyer and political activist. She acknowledged her privilege as a white, upper-middle-class American woman, something which feminists repeatedly fail to do. She defended housewives and women who had been left out of second-wave feminism. The Feminine Mystique was written by a rather sad, pathetic, angry woman who, instead of using her privilege to help support and uplift women, used it to turn on American housewives. The entire book basically says housewives bad. Feminism was really designed to turn women against each other. And then feminists have the nerve to call us non-feminists the misogynists when they're the ones who keep telling us that we're inferior to men and that we're being oppressed. If feminism was for all women, it would include non-feminist women. It would also include pro-life women. For example, the American feminist organization Feminists for Life was formed to criticize abortion and how abortion is treated as a cause of celebration by feminists. I'm actually going to do a video readdressing my views on abortion in the future because the current abortion debate is very bad and, once again, is designed to make us gang up on each other rather than work through this problem. Most people are not 100% pro-life or pro-choice. These divisions are not helpful nor representative of what most people actually think about abortion. Whenever I say that I support abortion, it's more to distinguish myself from the anti-feminists who say that abortion is barbaric and should be banned, which is really just based on Christianity. But in reality, I don't really support abortion. Of course, abortion is a horrible thing. It's a termination of a form of life, but it's just that I'd rather that it happen by a licensed doctor than down an alleyway with a coat hanger. But that's for another video. My point here is that it's contradictory how feminism claims to be for all women and then leaves pro-life women completely out of its movement. It does the same thing with religious women as well. Obviously, I have my views on the Abrahamic religions, but it's still unfair how Christian women and conservative women have all been excluded from feminism, and how feminism paints those women as pathetic slaves who are inferior to their husbands. Feminists really don't respect most women at all. They only respect feminist women. They don't respect traditional women, they don't respect housewives, they don't respect any woman who isn't a feminist. Furthermore, and this is a very, very key thing to note, if feminism was for all women, then why doesn't it promote womanism? Womanism was invented by and for African American women. If feminism was for all women, then why did black women feel the need to invent womanism? Why don't feminists even talk about womanism? It's as if intersectional feminism, which I'm going to do future videos on, has replaced womanism by championing itself as the noble cause for women of colour, even though it's just based on creating more division and more race, class, and gender-based division. Women of colour, particularly black women, already had our own movement that had nothing to do with feminism and politics. Just as Christianity came along and took over people's prior spiritual practices and beliefs, labeling them heathens and burning so-called witches at the stake, feminism has taken over something created by black women, womanism, and replaced it with intersectional feminism. What's even sadder is that intersectional feminism was invented by a black woman, even though feminism was never for or about black women to begin with. Friedan and Steinem both had the nerve to claim that they were just as oppressed as African Americans and created their terrible movement on the back of the civil rights movement. While African Americans were fighting for their actual civil rights, these extremely privileged, angry white women had the nerve to barge in and take over when the feminist movement never had anything to do with black women, especially not African American women. I doubt most feminists even know what womanism is, because intersectional feminism, another Marxist-based theory of social division to keep people in a state of perpetual victimhood, has become the mainstream, making black women forget about womanism that was about spiritual unity and being pro-women as well as pro-men, and had absolutely nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with feminism. The third and one of the dumbest forms of feminist gaslighting is the "but feminism is for men too" argument. This is how men end up being conned into becoming feminists, because feminists tell them that they care about men, while simultaneously blaming men for everything and calling men the oppressors of women. Men are the oppressed class and women are the oppressor class. Yeah, feminism helping men since literally never. I obviously don't think that any woman should be a feminist, but I can at least understand why hateful, angry, misandric women would become feminists, because it puts them in a position of power and allows them to use their privilege to bully everyone else. But why any man would call himself a feminist is utterly beyond me. Having spoken to various men about this, I can only see two key reasons as to why a man would call himself a feminist. A, he genuinely believes that feminism is a noble cause that is designed to help bring equality and civil rights for women, which is the same reason why most women who don't know how toxic feminism actually is call themselves feminists. Or B, he wants to get laid. Almost every man I've ever spoken to about feminism feels very uncomfortable by feminism or rejects it altogether, apart from the minority of men who think that they're feminists. Yet because men have an obvious desire to have sex with women and to have wives and girlfriends, no man is going to put himself in a position of being anti-women. Thus, men who call themselves feminists are usually afraid of offending or hurting women, or they're trying to get laid and thus manipulate women by telling women what they think we want to hear. Of course, if a man thinks it's going to help him get laid, he's going to say that he's a feminist. A lot of men call themselves feminists because men have an innate desire to be protective and caring towards women, especially if it's his wife or girlfriend, so no man's going to put himself in a position of being anti-women, even though in many ways feminism actually is very anti-women. In my opinion, there is no such thing as a feminist man. The idea that feminism is or ever has been for men too is a blatant lie, and even feminists themselves will tell us this. The word means women's doctrine. Feminism has never ever supported or helped men. All it's done is paint men as the enemy. There are a myriad of social and political issues facing men right now that feminism is doing absolutely nothing for. Any feminist who claims that feminism is for men too is either unaware or confused or being manipulated and being told that feminism is about equal rights, or she herself is trying to gaslight other people into thinking that feminism is about equal rights and is about men too, even though it obviously isn't. If it was, we wouldn't have men's rights activism. If it was, then we wouldn't have egalitarianism. If you are a man watching this and any feminist has told you that feminism is pro-men, then they're either confused about feminism and don't really understand it, or they're lying to you and trying to manipulate you. Most feminist theorists have a deep-seated fear and hatred of men. That's why they call men oppressors and why they blame men for everything bad that happens in the world without acknowledging all of the good things that men do and have done for the world. That's why they've distorted human history and painted men as the oppressors and the upholders of patriarchy, and turned male and female relations into a war zone rather than viewing us as complementary partners, which is what we're supposed to be. Feminism really is a form of political misandry. Men, please don't ever allow yourselves to be conned. Feminists do not care about men's issues. If the feminists who run the movement had their way, all men would be second-class citizens. The final and most disgraceful gaslighting technique of all that I shall discuss in this video that feminists often use is that they will cite feminism as responsible for all of women's social progress. What feminist historians have done is rewrite history to make it look like feminism was responsible for all of women's and men's social progress. That's why they now call ancient female leaders feminist heroes on various websites, even though the word feminism wasn't even invented until the 1800s. They've taken their movement and painted history, with a brush of lies to make it look like feminism is the reason for female empowerment. Feminists did not get women and men the right to vote in the UK. Men and women got the right to vote in the UK as a result of the First World War and democratic reform. Most men prior to the 19th century could not afford to own property, as during the feudal era, most people were peasants. Women not owning property was not about oppression, it was about division of labour and men and women playing different roles in society. The Equal Pay Act in America was passed 3 years before Freeland and Steinham formed the National Organization for Women. I'm going to do a longer video on the history of feminism later this year, unpacking most of the very key lies that feminism has woven into the social zeitgeist. But for now, please, every time a feminist tells you that the reason why women have made social progress is due to feminism, please investigate their claims. Again, don't just listen to what some random redheaded woman is telling you. Just go and do your own research. Modern contraception was invented by a group of men. Abortion was legalized by men. Even the sexual revolution initially had nothing to do with feminism. It was triggered by the invention of contraception and changing social attitudes, moving away from Christianity. Modern birth control itself actually has more to do with eugenics and a desire for population control, and wasn't even about women's liberation at all, but that is also going to be for another video. Got a lot of videos coming over the next year. All you have to do is simply search the history of birth control or the history of women and men's suffrage in the UK and see for yourself. The answers are all there, hiding in plain sight. Once you simply ask questions and look into things, you just start to see how really feminism doesn't make any sense. They've taken a paintbrush and said that all of the women of the past were being oppressed and that they didn't have any agency and they didn't have any rights. Any article, any website, any book that has been written by a feminist does its best to paint women in states of misery and pain, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's like the feminists assume that all of the women of the past were these pathetic, fragile morons who didn't have any rights or didn't have any say. What's even more ridiculous is how before the Abrahamic religions, most people prayed to and worshipped multiple gods and goddesses. What man would view his own mother as a second-class citizen and then go and pray to a female goddess? I'm absolutely sure and aware that a small group of people always have been genuinely sexist and misogynistic towards women, but a small group of people, likewise, always have been sexist and misandric towards men. There are just as many misogynists as there are misandrists. When men are sexist towards women, we call them misogynists, rightfully so. But when women are sexist towards men, we call them feminists. Why? It's ridiculous. Whenever someone uses hatred, fear, and bigotry to keep you from questioning your reality, it's safe to assume that that person does not have your best interests at heart. Feminist activists and academics really don't care about making the world a better place. They care about making the world into a feminist utopia. That's what they want, and the sooner that we all realize this, the sooner we can free ourselves from a state of mental imprisonment. No sane man or woman alive on this earth needs feminism or any political doctrine as an excuse to enact social progress and change. One can advocate for women and be a women's advocate and help women in times of hardship and crisis without needing some hateful female supremacist women's doctrine. Human compassion and reason generate social change and progress. None of any of the achievements, goals, and accomplishments created in human society owe anything to the hateful, dishonest, manipulative, narcissistic ideology that is feminism. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing to stay up to date with the content that I post, and also consider joining my two groups, Liberals Against Feminism, which is a Discord group for people with liberal-minded views who are against feminism, and the subreddit Women's Advocates that advocates for women's rights and female empowerment without having anything to do with feminism.